What if I told you that Ferrari has just made the biggest technical bet of the entire grid in recent years? What if I told you that this update to the SF-26 could turn Maranello into the new giant of F1? Or sink them forever? What happened in Bahrain was not just another test. It was all or nothing for Ferrari. Stick around because you're going to find out why this play could redefine the entire season. The Bahrain Grand Prix. It was, in essence, a covert testing ground, a battle fought more in the garages than on the track. Because what Ferrari brought to the desert was not a simple update. It was a complete transformation of the SF-26. A technical package so ambitious that within the paddock it began to be called, without irony, the B car. This package focused on 4 key areas: aerodynamics, cornering stability, cooling efficiency, and exit traction. The solutions applied were not superficial. The front wing was redesigned with a more aggressive profile, seeking to generate a cleaner load that would allow the airflow to be directed more coherently towards the flat bottom. It was not simply about gaining load, but doing so without penalizing straight-line efficiency, something that has historically punished Ferrari on high-speed circuits. The floor of the car, probably the most critical part in this generation of single-seaters, was deeply worked on. New ventilation channels and optimized geometries were introduced that sought to keep the ground effect more stable, especially in crosswind conditions, which in Bahrain can destroy the lateral stability of the car. This modification also responded to one of the great weak points of the SF-26, its inconsistency at medium speed. In parallel, the front suspension also received changes. Ferrari implemented a new damping system that sought to better control vertical movements during braking. This not only improves corner entry stability, but also allows drivers to attack more aggressively without compromising front tire wear, a recurring problem in the first 2 Grands Prix. Finally, the side air inlets and part of the cooling system were redesigned, adjusting the internal thermal flows to keep the center of gravity lower and free up space in the upper area of the chassis. This change, although less visible from the outside, has a direct impact on the overall balance of the car and the efficiency of the entire aerodynamic package. All of this was implemented in record time. The technical team led by Enrico Cardile had to coordinate manufacturing, data bank testing, and wind tunnel validation in a matter of weeks. Even within Maranello, there were voices warning about the risk of introducing so many new variables at once. But the situation left no room. Ferrari could not afford a progressive evolution. They needed a breakup. And it was in Bahrain where all this effort was put to the test. During testing, Charles Leclerc completed a full race simulation with the new package. The performance was encouraging. Consistent times, less degradation in the second stint, and most importantly, a feeling of confidence on the part of the driver. Something that had been missing in the previous rounds. Hamilton, although still in the process of adapting, also reported improvements in the car's overall behavior. Their feedback was clear. The car feels more coherent, more predictable. For a driver like Lewis, who bases his strength on sensitivity with the rear axle, this is essential. However, it must be qualified. Although Ferrari showed obvious signs of progress, they are still not at McLaren's level in terms of pure speed. Norris led the race simulation with a lead of more than 10 seconds. Although it is true that McLaren used tires from a softer range, which muddies the comparison, it is also true that Ferrari continues to depend on favorable context to maximize its performance. That is to say, the car has improved, yes, but it has not magically become the best on the grid. The most telling thing, perhaps, was the team's attitude during testing. Unlike previous occasions, Ferrari did not seek to top the timetables. They didn't ride soft compounds or empty the tank to make headlines. The approach was purely technical. Background work, long simulations, comparative evaluations between versions. This behavior speaks of maturity, of a different mentality. But it also speaks of enormous pressure. Because this update is not just a step forward. It is, in internal words, the definitive bet. Ferrari's Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C for 2025. There are no further radical developments on the agenda. All the potential of the SF-26 is now in this new version. And if it is not enough, there will be nothing left but to resist and limit damage until 2026. Thus, in silence, without big statements, Ferrari has moved its most important piece on the board. What happens in the next 3 races will define not only their season, but possibly the immediate future of their entire technical and sporting structure. The private test in Bahrain arrived just in time for Ferrari. Not as another development opportunity, but as a mandatory exam to validate the entire structural redesign of the SF-26. This was not just any test. It was the turning point. The possibility of giving meaning to the enormous logistical and technical effort that Maranello had channeled in less than a month. Therefore, the team treated these tests as a disguised race weekend. From simulating real conditions to internal pressure, each lap had the weight of an entire season on its shoulders. Ferrari arrived with a single mission: to check if the new aerodynamic and mechanical package was not only more competitive on paper, but if it could be translated into real, sustainable, and, above all, consistent results. The eyes were mainly on Charles Leclerc, who was in charge of carrying out most of the long runs, race simulations, and evaluating pace with different fuel loads. The strategy was clear: collect accurate data, rather than impress with artificially low times. And the first signs were positive. In an extended run, using hard and then medium tires, Leclerc managed to maintain a competitive pace for more than 30 laps. The drop in performance was progressive and predictable, something that had not happened either in Australia or in China, where the degradation skyrocketed from lap 15. This time, the SF-26 not only allowed for more aggressive driving in the first phase of the stint, but also offered a more stable balance in the medium and high-speed corners, sectors in which Ferrari used to be vulnerable. Lewis Hamilton, for his part, was in charge of testing the car in shorter runs, focused on qualifying pace and sensitivity to setting changes. Although still in the process of adapting to the car's philosophy, a transition that has required a significant adjustment in his braking and corner entry style, the Briton reported clear improvements in confidence, especially in the rear of the car. The SF-26 no longer betrayed him in the middle phase of the curve. There was less jitter, more traction off the line, and a more predictable response to balance changes. One of the highlights was the way the car responded to changing road conditions, especially at higher temperatures. Historically, Ferrari has suffered in intense heat scenarios, due to the difficulty of keeping the tires within the ideal operating range. However, in Bahrain, the new cooling and thermal management system appeared to work better than expected. The internal sensors showed a significant decrease in temperature spikes, which helped stabilize wear on both axles. This, although technical and unglamorous, is crucial in any racing aspiration. If you don't manage the heat well, you don't manage the pace well. In terms of aerodynamics, there was a clear improvement in the way the SF-26 generated load without compromising top speed. In the second sector of Sakir, where fast linked corners predominate, Ferrari managed to position itself within the top 3 in the telemetry sheets. This suggests that the new flat bottom and revised front wing are working harmoniously, allowing for better axle connection and higher minimum cornering speed. It's not just about braking later or accelerating earlier, but about having a car that flows stably in the critical phase of each turn. But not everything was ideal. The simulations also exposed a persistent weakness. The SF-26 still has a slight tendency to understeer in low fuel load conditions, especially in low-speed corners. This could be a serious problem at circuits like Monaco or Hungary. Furthermore, although Ferrari achieved competitive times, McLaren and Red Bull were not present in all the comparative stints, leaving a margin of uncertainty as to whether the progress shown is enough to close the real gap in straight racing conditions. The attitude within the team, however, changed drastically. Unlike the defensive tone that marked the first 2 races, the atmosphere in Bahrain was more optimistic. Not euphoric, but hopeful. The body language of the engineers was more relaxed. The pilots spoke of measurable progress, and even some jokes were allowed in the briefings. Internally, the team felt that they had finally created a platform on which to build the rest of the year. It was no longer about survival. It was about competing. The most revealing thing was what was not said. Ferrari did not come out to publicly declare that they had solved all their problems. They didn't leak stratospheric lap times or invite the press to take a closer look at their setups. Instead, they chose silence. A silence that, in the language of Formula One, is usually the prelude to something serious. Because when a team works without needing to convince the world, it is because it is finally beginning to convince itself. Ferrari has moved its biggest chip, and it has done it before anyone else. In a sport where every tenth counts and every technical decision can determine the course of a season, they have bet their entire immediate future on a revised SF-26 concept. There is no more safety net. This is your definitive move. What has been seen in Bahrain is not a victory yet. It's not a redemption either. It is a whisper in the midst of chaos. A slight flash that suggests that perhaps this time Ferrari could have hit the right button. The feeling within the team is of progress, of solidity. But Formula One does not forgive those who conform. It's not enough to improve. You have to win. You have to be consistent. You have to be relentless. The pressure is total. Because if this package does not turn the SF-26 into a car capable of fighting for poles and victories, it will be difficult to sustain the story of a reborn Ferrari. McLaren's room for improvement remains gigantic. Red Bull, even with its internal turbulence, has Verstappen extracting performance from any tool. And Mercedes seems to have found in Russell and Antonelli a more cohesive duo than many expected. In this context, Ferrari cannot afford to relapse. Leave me your opinion in the comments what you think about all this.